Hi, this is Gerd Leonhard, futurist and humanist in Zurich. Really great pleasure to be with you today for all 3 days of the Future Talk Forum in Bern in Switzerland. Albeit, of course, I'll be there remotely with you. But I'll kick this off with the first session that's going to be about education and future foresights on what's called STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And I will have two other juicy topics for you tomorrow. Let's start right here, and by analyzing what's happening right now, it's really quite clear we're in a period of great transformation and disruption, and also of hardship, I think, with the COVID crisis, economic, personal, social hardship. But we're now transitioning into a new world where things that used to be on top have landed at the bottom, like flying, like cruise ships, oil and gas, and Bitcoin, and all the practical things of a developed industrial society. Now we have new things on the top: technology, healthcare, working from home, the whole discussion about how we're going to live in a sustainable world, and who does what, and globalization and government. It's all new topics. There's a new narrative forming, and I call this the Great Transformation, which is a huge chance for us to reset. Some people talk about the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum does, and many other people have other terms for it. But here's an interesting cover design from Time magazine, also talking about the Great Reset. That is the time that's happening right now. And so next year should be really quite exciting, if, of course, still very difficult. We're not going to head out of the corona crisis anytime soon next year, maybe at the end of next year if we're lucky. We're living in a world that is not returning to normal. Whatever you thought about normal, I thought, normal wasn't good enough, but we're not going back there. We're not going back to a place where we travel as usual, we burn fossil fuel as usual, we have the same jobs, we work from the office. That is being rethought in every country around the world. Here in Switzerland, things are a little bit different, and we are often slower in responding to this. But yeah, we're not going back to normal. We're going to a set of new normals. We're going into a world that is essentially warp drive into the future. And when you think about education and vocational training and what we have to learn in this world, basically the next 10 years will bring more change than the previous 100 years. And this is not an overstatement. We're essentially going into that future gradually, then suddenly, everything's kind of going slowly, like cloud computing or quantum computing or the Internet of Things or technology, and boom, it's there. All of a sudden, we have a legal music service, several of them, and music is in the cloud. That took 10 years. So gradually, then suddenly is borrowed from a Hemingway novel, of course. But basically what we see here is the pandemic is a great accelerator of the things that were already there before. If there was inequality, we have more of it now. If there was political distrust, we have more of it now. If there's good things like working from home, doing remote teaching, remote learning, learning in the cloud, that is exploding. So I'm going to show you a couple of those key trends, very important, I think, when we talk about education and the future, to look at this. Online learning and training is exploding, and that's going to take a huge boost from virtuality, from augmented reality, holograms. But having said that, of course, everybody knows that online learning is not the same than person-to-person meet space, real life learning. It's great, but it's different, and I'll talk about that later, why that is. A virtual video conference, as we do now, that is set to explode. Telemedicine, telehealth. Yeah, people are now saying, well, maybe I don't have to go to the doctor. It may be risky, so I'm going to do a remote consultation. The doctor on demand here on your Apple Watch, right? E-commerce, online media is exploding. We're moving into a world where everything is all of a sudden, it seems like it was gradual, and now boom is here, working from home. Right? In Switzerland, we have always worked from home quite a bit, and we have good resources, networks, mobile networks, wireless networks, and so on for all of that. But this is definitely also a huge challenge in our mindset. And what do we need to know to work from home? And the skills we need in the office are really quite different than the ones we need from home. I think we're in a time of great transformation, a time of great reset, where we essentially are, as Buckminster Fuller liked to say, the great futurist, at a fork in the road. Right? It is a place where we have to make sure that we take the right turn towards the sunny part of that road, not the dark part. And what would education for a new world look like? And how do we train our skills for that new world? The next 10 years, more changes than the previous 100 years. Well, what do we need to know? What kind of skills do we need? Probably not at all the same than 10 years ago. We're living in a world that is exponentially fast and also exponentially challenging. Right? It's not actually 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 anymore. It's exploding. It's doubling. An exponential curve, Moore's law, Metcalfe's law, 4, 8, 16, 32. Go up the scale a few times, you're at 1 billion. So our kids are going to see a world that's exponentially different. And that change will be absolutely mind-boggling in terms of what is becoming possible, what we have to know. But it could also be very rewarding because we can solve global problems this way that have been there for quite some time. I often use this image of the mega shifts and the game changes. And here are the 10 game changes that we're currently seeing around us, technological game changes. And I think we've seen those for a while, like 3D printing or intelligent machines or blockchain, but they're finally all coming together and creating new possibilities. I mean, if it wasn't for all this technology, the cloud, the mobile, the analytics, we probably have a lot more people in the hospital and even dying than we have now. I mean, this is a bad enough number, but think about what happened in World War I, the swine flu, 60 million people. And now we have the tech to coordinate and to make this easier. So basically what's happening all around us, this is what we have to know. What's happening with virtuality and quantum computing? And you can read more about that if you just go to Game Changers on Google and put in my name. You'll see. But basically what's happening here is really quite simple, is that technology is no longer just exponential. It's also converging the industries, right? And creating combinatorial results. So, for example, many companies are now experiencing that they are becoming tech companies. Right? The biotechnology companies, for example, genetic engineering, and e-commerce. Everything is around technology now. And education is going the same path. There's going to be a huge amount of investment in technology, huge possibilities of new sources. But it comes down still to one thing, humans learn best with and other humans through engagement and experiences. And that's going to remain, I think, the cornerstone of education and training in the future. Apart from those three things that we see all around us, everything is in the cloud, our movies, our books, everything else. Everything is becoming intelligent, so-called, but I think that word is actually quite bad. It's more like becoming smart rather than intelligent. But if we set this aside for a minute, what is happening on top of this is this kind of convergence of humans and machines. As we look around us, it's quite clear that every day there's more technology to support us and to help us, and sometimes also to affect us and to infect us, so to speak, like social networks or gaming or virtuality. Now we have to ask a question: what does it mean all for education? And what does it mean for what we have to learn, what skills we have? It's quite clear that computers are getting quite skillful, not in any human sense, but the routine is probably going to be done by machines. Any routine, really, as long as it's understandable by machines, for example, a call center, or researching, or filing, connecting. We're already using lots and lots of tools that are kind of intelligent, for the most part. Right? So I think it's safe to say my favorite movie, Blade Runner, has set forth, 30 years ago, well, the first one, right? Science fiction is becoming science fact. And I think I have observed that all around me, wherever you look, science fiction that used to be, kind of theoretically possible but not happening, is all around us. For example, now we are speaking to computers and they understand us. Not very well yet, but I mean, you could see where this is going. In 5 years, you could speak to your machine and ask any question, and it won't even be a machine. It could just be your wristwatch or the wall, right? And you can get pretty smart answers. You can probably sit at home and enjoy the internet delivering everything to you. I call this a sofalarity, kind of like the singularity. You can do 3D printing of many, many objects, including shoes and electronic devices, and of course body parts like kneecaps and earlobes, and that's already here. But just give it 10 years and we'll see what that future will bring. And of course, machines are now becoming intelligent, and they're becoming also assistant to us. So telemedicine, being able to have remote diagnostics, could reduce hospital visits by 80% if used correctly, and this is clearly the way that Apple is going and others. And last not least, machines are learning. Are they learning like us? No. but they can certainly look at a lot of patterns. IBM Watson's AI can read basically, I think, 1 million books in 2 minutes, and it can store all this information that humans can't. Machine learning, deep learning, and language understanding. Right? I mean, imagine what that means when the computer can speak to you and actually understand when you speak, like with a person, which is not quite there, but soon will be. We're going to see stuff like this as a great project by Waverly Labs. It's a translation device that I just...
How did last night's assignment go?
كيف ذهبت مهمة الليالي الماضية؟
كان جيداً. كان هناك مشكلة واحد لا نستطيع الحصول عليه.
It was all right, but there was one problem I didn't get.
I think this device is still in demo stages, but clearly you could see that, yeah, once we have that, think about education. I mean, you can speak in 30 languages or receive information in 30 languages and send WhatsApps in 50 languages in real time. Or you can use Facebook's so-called infinite office, which allows you to dive into the virtual world and understand what's happening there, like Tom Cruise in Minority Report. Imagine if we had that now. Yeah, it could be heaven, it could be hell, but think about the impact on education and learning and development of this. It could be too good to be true in many ways. So we're heading into the future where what I call the mega shifts in my first book, in my recent book, is becoming even more important. And these are not just technology, they're also social shifts, and they're like a matrix of things that are interacting all the time. And if we look at those, you can have a look at the website, megashifts.digital, where you can download the whole chapter, all in like 12 languages. But it's interactively impacting each other. So we have augmentation, we have robotization, we have cognification, systems becoming smart. We have machines that understand other machines and can find patterns and do things that used to be humans doing this kind of work, which is probably still on the lower level of cognitive work. But of course, automation will be a much bigger change than globalization has ever been. And this map of changes, virtualization, what technology does, is going to be mind-boggling in terms of what it can do for us and which way we can go. So I think the mega shifts are going to impact all of the sciences and engineering and math, but they will also push us towards a world that's about HECI, right? Humanity, ethics, creativity, and imagination, because machines will be able to do so much more logical work. And we're going to be in an entirely different world that's kind of not, to get too traditional here with the brain halves, but it's not going to be just about IQ and smartness. It's going to be about EQ, right? The human factor, the emotional quotient, emotional intelligence. And that just means basically being human and having compassion. And how do you develop that? Can you go to school for this? Can you get an MBA in emotions? And so I think our future holds that STEM will still be very important. It's all about technology. But on the other hand, the humanities are coming back. Huh? Humanity, ethics, creativity, imagination. I'll call that HECI as an abbreviation as opposed to STEM. So those two things will be balanced very much in our future. And we're going to see a huge momentum on the curriculum in schools to go back to this, but also in companies to have training for curiosity, and training for imagination, training for intuition. And you can see in this amazing chart here from the World Economic Forum, the future of jobs, what we see here is that companies are looking to accelerate digitization and remote work opportunities and automation. Clearly, it's all about tech. And amazingly, we see quite a few people who want to reassign workers, but not too many that want to basically completely decrease the workforce, if you're being honest. But businesses have to adopt, and this is where we're going, and that's going to force us to be better humans and have better skills in the future. That's clearly going to be a very, very big change. I always say that the future is not an extension of the present or the past. The future is new. Right? And whatever has worked until now, great. Will that work in the future? Unlikely. The music business does not sell CDs anymore, even though they still do, right? But you may have still bought one. But it's in the cloud, it's different. The future is not the same than the past. It's an extension of the future coming backwards. So very important for us to realize in our training and our future skills, what we teach our kids or our employees. We have to teach them the future. We have to teach them what they may need tomorrow. Right? In this sort of upside down world that we're clearly seeing here, these waves are all over us, right? First the COVID wave, challenging us, challenging our existence, our survival, then climate change, which is the next thing, and of course after that a new economic logic. How would you understand this? Well, you have to have what I call a future mindset and get ready to educate yourself on the future. So this wraps up my first session, and tomorrow I'll be back and I'll talk about green futures and what that means for education, and of course the next day with yet another one. Thanks very much for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow.